President Lukashenko, there are many topics we would like to discuss today, and I would like to begin by asking you about the significance of yesterday's military drill inside Belarus. What was the meaning, and does this signal perhaps a wider, more direct participation of Belarus in the Ukraine war?
На вторую часть вопроса вам отвечаю прямо нет.
Let me answer the second part of the question directly. No. We do not intend to take part in Russia's special military operation in Ukraine because there is no need at all. Anything we can or could offer to the Russian Federation, they have already. So there's absolutely no need to take part in that special military operation. As for our armed forces, I don't know why you highlighted that aspect. Maybe because it was our armed forces' last activity. But since our joint drills with the Russian Federation, you remember those, since last year, conducting those wasn't accidental, and it wasn't connected to the special military operation as much as it was to your armed forces activity. The NATO bloc, especially in Poland and the Baltics, as well as aggravation of the situation around Belarus. Lately, that situation has been aggravated even more fiercely, I would say. And naturally, the armed forces are bound to react. I'll be direct with you. That's why even before the NATO bloc commenced with the drills in Poland and the Baltics, we knew about it. We haven't been informed in a civilized way, but we have enough capabilities to find out on our own. And we found out about your drills close to our borders. We saw the US, Great Britain, and the rest of NATO countries moving towards our borders. We saw the US, Great Britain, and the rest of NATO countries moving troops towards our borders. A few years ago, they were numbered at 3,000. Now, it's 32,000. You see the growth? And so we must react, and we do. We react not only with the latest activities of our armed forces you just mentioned. We have to take into account what is happening in Ukraine. Therefore, we hold even more events on an ongoing basis in the south of our Belarus in order to cover our southern border from various misunderstandings. I think that we will be able to avoid any misunderstandings, not only in the south, but also in the west of Belarus. So it shouldn't bother anyone. We hold all the events on our territory. We do not threaten anyone, and we are not going to threaten, and we will not do it. Moreover, we can't threaten. We know who opposes us, so to unleash some kind of a conflict, some kind of war here in the West is absolutely not in the interests of the Belarusian state. So the West can sleep peacefully.
And yet you are, at least internationally, intrinsically associated with this war. You allowed the Russians to invade Ukraine from your territory. Do you regret in any way that decision, given what you are seeing inside Ukraine?
I am very sorry about what is happening in Ukraine. But this question is not for me. It is a question for the leadership of Ukraine. In the West, it has not been customary lately to even talk about what preceded the special military operation of the Russian Federation, of the armed forces of Russia. Well, try to remember. I don't understand why Ukrainians needed to provoke Russia. After all, relations were developing normally. They were going to the point that it was possible to agree on all issues. I say it as a person in the know. I've been in the process all the time. I'm more well versed on the subject than anyone else, and I saw that it was possible to agree. But starting from personal insults to the Russian leadership, to various economic provocations of pressure and mockery of Russian people in Ukraine, I'm talking about an infringement of the Russian language and people in eastern Ukraine being pressured. I saw it all. I just don't understand why Ukraine needed this. Thus, Ukraine provoked the Russian Federation. I will not list all the factors and facts known to the entire world community. Yes, today we can say that you and the Americans pushed them to take these actions. This is true from a geopolitical point of view. The Americans withdrew from Afghanistan. Many of the operatives involved there had to be deployed somewhere else. But that is the bare minimum. So they decided to apply pressure on Ukraine. But the most important thing is the geopolitical aspect. We see it now. We see it now. The United States want to take advantage of the moment, drag their allies into this, and drown Russia in the war in Ukraine. That's their goal. We need to deal with Russia and then with China. Excuse me, Mr. Phillips, but that's how we understand the situation here. Maybe we're wrong about something, but that's what we understand and act accordingly. As for Belarusians, listen, there is nothing to reproach me for. Remember Minsk I, Minsk II. I did everything to ensure peace there. Ukraine, on the eve of our last election campaign, has trained a bunch of militants on its territory. Trained Poles, Latvians, Lithuanians, and above all, Ukrainians. They trained those fighters there. They were sending weapons here along with the militants. Not a single person has been detained. They testified about where, who, and how. And forget them if you want to tell me they are in prison. They are being pressured and so on. But there are a lot of facts when Ukrainians themselves, not ordinary people, told how they were preparing to fight in Belarus and who prepared them. It was the SBU, the Security Service of Ukraine. Look at those known statements. Then, even before the Americans and the Europeans, they imposed economic sanctions against us. Why? They were actually the second country with which we traded. First place Russia, second Ukraine. We supplied a lot of goods there. They supplied us with a lot of goods. Up to $8 billion in turnover of commodities. They closed the sky for our planes. There were a lot of such facts before the conflict with Russia. The question is why? Why aggravate relations with Belarus and provoke Russia? They got what they asked for. So of course, this is bad. It's bad for us that two neighboring countries are fighting, and ones that is very close to us, very close to us. You know, I have my roots somewhere deep in Ukraine. In Ukraine, I remember this. I have always said and emphasized this. Russia is the fraternal closest state to us. People there are the same as Belarusians. And generally, we are three peoples from the same root of the tree. We grow from the same root. How can I not be worried? We lost every third resident. There is not a square meter of the territory of Belarus where people didn't die. You also know that very well. How can we contribute to war? But you must understand that we are allies, the closest allies with the Russian Federation. We have the strongest military political alliance. We didn't hide it from anyone. Our armies are essentially one and the same, and we conducted large-scale exercises in the south at the end of last year. We didn't hide that either. There were Americans present there, Europeans. We were open. We invited everyone. And the fact that the Russian Federation used part of those troops for the military operation after the end of the drills. By the way, after the exercises, Russia began to withdraw troops from Belarus, and it all began with a provocation. The Ukrainians have built 4 Tochka-U missile launching sites targeted at Belarus. Lucky for us, there were still troops left there after the drills, and the Russians helped us trace and hit those 4 positions just 30 minutes before the start of the military operation. And part of the troops really left Belarus to the south to Ukraine. So from the picture I just painted, should I have acted differently? I don't think so. The latest events that are unfolding, that we are seeing, don't allow you to reproach me for anything. Because the United States of America and the West, instead of ending the war in Ukraine with dignity, are escalating the situation by supplying weapons instead, and so on and so forth. Let me assure you that Russia, how should I put it, is taking it too easy fighting in Ukraine. This is just the beginning, and it has to be finished right at the beginning. No need to escalate the situation and no need to blame us for siding with Russia. And while there's only one country openly siding with Russia on this, Belarus, on the other side, as many as 50 states have united helping Ukraine fight not only with weapons but also with manpower and mercenaries. What for? And the things I'm saying were not picked up from CNN, Reuters or Russian channels. We can clearly see what is happening in Ukraine. So believe what I am saying, and you know that very well yourself. So believe what I'm saying, and you know that very well yourself. So we categorically do not accept any war. We have done and are doing everything now so that there isn't a war. Thanks to yours truly, me that is, negotiations between Ukraine and Russia have begun. I know what Russia is offering to Ukraine, but why is Ukraine, on whose territory a war in effect is ongoing? Military action, people are dying. Why is Ukraine not interested in these negotiations is another question. But the answer to that question can only be found in Washington.
Respectfully, the arguments you raise about why the war began are widely discredited outside Russia and Belarus. You say that you are seeing with your own eyes what is happening inside Ukraine, and so are we. The independent media are in various places, from Mariupol to Bucha and all over. Isn't that message you were just conveying one that you should actually be conveying to the Russian president? You have a close relationship with him, and as a fellow Slavic nation, you yourself said how close these 3 nations are. Do you not feel a responsibility to say that the atrocities that we are all seeing, that are happening and that cannot be disputed, must stop?
Yes, I want to say not only I promise to convey your words to the President of Russia, and we will meet with him in the near future, I promise, but I want to direct the same words to you, to the West first of all. Stop lying. Stop lying. You should not give the example of Bucha. You picked the wrong person to ask about it. What happened in Bucha, I have no evidence of Reuters' involvement in it. You picked the wrong person to ask about it. I have no evidence of Reuters' involvement in it. Not just Reuters, but the Associated Press as well. But we know who organized this window dressing. We controlled the process of the British, mostly the British who were in cars. We saw 4 cars. We gave the Russians the plate numbers of cars that arrived from Lviv, that were filming in Bucha. And then dumped it into the informational space. Well, war is war. That's how war goes. This is not surprising to me. So there is no need to talk to me about Bucha. As far as Mariupol, listen, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, recently visited Ukraine and asked Putin a number of questions. Putin was open and agreed with Guterres. He asked to open the corridors, to evacuate civilians and so on. Why don't they evacuate? So Mariupol is also not an appropriate example in the context of our reasoning. Everything is decided here, and everything depends on the authorities of Ukraine. You know, Mr. Phillips, we can reproach Russia as much as we like, but this is of little use. One must understand that the war is not on the territory of Russia. The war is on the territory of Ukraine. And the country's leadership should be primarily interested in ensuring that civilians do not die. And we must do everything for this. I remember the events after 2015 in eastern Ukraine. Had the agreements reached here in this room in Minsk been implemented, had Ukraine abided by those agreements, then today Ukraine would exist within the borders of Soviet era. There would be no war. The third elections would have been held in Donetsk, in Donbass. Excuse my frankness, Ukrainians would have conducted it the way they wanted to. Big issues need to be resolved calmly, step by step. Pyotr Poroshenko did not do this. I have been an intermediary between Putin and Poroshenko many times, and even between the current president, Volodya Zelensky, and Putin. I am a witness to how the agreements were implemented, because I passed certain messages along to both. I would pass along what Putin said to Zelensky, and what Zelensky said back to Putin. But I see that Ukraine was not determined to solve the problem step by step, which led to the war. Therefore, if you are talking about some atrocities in Ukraine, address this primarily to the Poles, for example, the United States of America and Great Britain. If you are interested in the war in Ukraine ending, the United States and Great Britain, this can be done within a week, or even earlier, but you're not interested in it.
This isn't like some wars where the media are shut out and unable to be on the ground and bearing witness. We and other media are seeing with our own eyes. We are talking to survivors, and there is no doubt about what has happened. I think it's very important that misinformation stops and that facts be recognized. It's very hard for the world to listen to theories that mass rape, killings of women, children and men, and mass graves is either not happening, has been stage managed, or a conspiracy theory that other nations have done it. Why do you insist on this claim that what we are all seeing with our own eyes and what the world is seeing isn't actually happening as we believe it to be happening?
It's not my business to provide any additional evidence about it. Once again, we know very well what was going on in Bucha. We know this particular example very well. Believe me, I know what was going on there better than you do. I offered you what I know. My own version, although this version is based on concrete facts. If you don't believe it, well, God be with you. I can't make you believe. Well, you take it as one of the viewpoints then. And the fact that there is misinformation, I understand that and take it in my stride, because there is a war going on. This is the war of today, hybrid war. It starts with the media and continues with the media, which is a powerful weapon. They accompany military operations. I understand that too. I don't take it well, but I understand. But how do you understand that on the internet, in other traditional media, you have shut down different points of view altogether? Fine, you don't want to hear or listen to me or to Belarus. We can be neglected. Fine. But listen to the other side, to Russia's point of view. Why are Russian journalists blocked everywhere? Why are you shutting their mouths? After all, on your platforms controlled by the West and the United States of America, the resources are vast, much larger than what we or the Russians have. You don't allow for a different point of view there at all. You instantly block all sorts of account sites and so on. Correct, Natalia Nikolaevna? I'm not mistaken, am I? This is obvious. Why are you afraid of a different point of view? Why don't you just let it exist in your media? And the fact that you came to see me today, it does you credit.
I respectfully disagree about the way the Western and global media works, but let's put that to one side. And I'd like to talk a little about your relationship with Vladimir Putin. I would be interested in how you would characterize it. I believe you have had ups and downs in the past, but I would be very interested to know how frank you can be with him, and particularly on the subject of the war, how honest your discussions with him can be.
I doubt that Vladimir Putin has closer, open and friendly relations with any of the world leaders than with the President of Belarus. That's number one. As for how honest or dishonest I'm being with President Putin, anything I want to say to Putin about what I think, I tell him directly, without any approaches and so on, head on, straightforward. I can tell him anything, like to an older brother. And there is no resentment there, and there is no perception of any kind. Otherwise, we'd have a difficult relationship, or maybe we would not have had one at all. So he's direct with me, and I'm direct with him, telling him whatever I think. Well, of course, I can't tell you what I talk to Putin about, but we have very worthy, honest and open relations, especially now. We went through Belarus in 2020 together. He cared about what was going on here. Thank goodness we handled it. And when I asked him to support me, if necessary, there were no questions at all, even in terms of our personal relationships. Why do I have to support you, Americans, the West, who every month introduced more and more sanctions, illegal sanctions, against Belarus? We haven't done anything wrong to you, but you keep pushing us down. And forget me, what are you pushing our people down for? What did we ever do wrong to you, to push us down? You have been imagining things all the time. Russia has never allowed itself, for at least the last 2 or 3 years, such a policy. Never. Why should I pursue a different policy towards Putin and Russia? The question is rhetorical. That's why we have a good relationship with him. The best relationships that can exist between heads of independent states. And so you just said something unpleasant to him. I promise you that I will pass this conversation to him word for word. I'll pass it on in a second. We can talk about any topic. We sit down to dinners and lunches together and can easily discuss all problems of a personal nature, my family situation, his family situation. At the state level, Russia's problems, Belarus's problems. Recently, he and I were speaking here, and he asked me the question, have you ever been to the Far East? I had been to Vladivostok. He looked at me again and asked, what's your opinion? How are people's lives there? What else do they need? What are they lacking? I openly told him about my impressions. We talk about Ukraine. I tell him frankly how I see it. But I must also sincerely tell you that I don't get brazen, colloquially speaking. We don't need any brazenness here. I'm not going to lecture him and so on. He's an experienced politician. He doesn't need to be lectured. And then, of course, I know practically everything related to Putin's policies, including Ukraine. And since I know it, there is no need for me to ask these questions. I can simply express my point of view. That is, there is an orderliness to our relationship. There is no rudeness in our relationship. The fact is that our relationship has had its ups and downs, and we have often argued. Putin is a more reserved person, and he's right to be one. He often reproaches me. Look, this shouldn't have been made public, put in the public domain, so that it can be discussed openly. I'm more of an open